All right, hello everybody. Welcome back into both the NASDAQ and the ETF Option Superstars program. I did want to get a video out here highlighting one of our positions from last week, and I want to show it as an example of how to handle assignment risk, specifically around a dividend. When we sell credit spreads, oftentimes there's fear initially from people that have not used these strategies before, thinking you're on the hook for potentially some large losses if the trade goes against you, specifically if you get assigned stock, because a lot of us don't want to have thousands of dollars tied up in a stock position. So I want to show you a couple of examples today to highlight how we know what our risk is right up front, even if we do get assigned on these positions from time to time. Now, I am traveling here at the moment, so I don't have my normal setup. If there is an audio issue here, I know it's not the best audio. I'm just using my computer audio for this video, so I apologize for the quality. But I did want to get the video out as soon as possible so you guys have some answers to some of your questions. So let's talk through this. I just created a couple of quick slides, and then we'll jump over to Thinkorswim to highlight some of this in more detail. So when we sell a credit spread, there is always the potential of getting assigned stock if that stock moves against us. So in the case of TLT, this is the bond ETF that we like to trade. And there's a lot of questions that came in on one of our recent positions because we had a dividend upcoming. Now, whether it's a dividend or it's just a directional move against us, what happens if the option that you sold, specifically in this case a short call option, what if it goes in the money? What is the risk there? First thing to point out, if you do get a notice from your broker that you've been assigned stock, don't panic. Every position that we utilize with our programs at NetPicks is a risk-defined trade. We know what our worst-case scenario is right up front. So it can be a little daunting, a little intimidating initially, because if you do get assigned stock, your P&L is going to look a little funky there for a day. We can always get out of the position. Your P&L will normalize. You'll know what your max loss is right up front. I'll show you how to do that here in just a moment. Now, assignment happens when the short option that we sold to open the trade gets exercised. When I sell a call option, for example, somebody else is on the other side of that trade. They want to exercise their right to buy the shares of stock. So we have to deliver on our end of the bargain, and we have to go ahead and sell them those 100 shares of stock, 100 shares of stock per option that we sold. All right, so delivering up on our end of the bargain, we have to sell them the shares of that stock, even if we don't own the shares of stock. So we're actually going to have to go in, borrow the shares of stock to deliver the person on the other side of the trade. So that's going to leave us short the shares of stock. The reason why you have to have a margin account to trade the vertical spreads is for this very reason. There's going to be a day there that you're going to have a stock position on that could potentially be larger than your account. Now, we can always close out of the position right away. Again, I'll show you that here in just a second. So it's not going to leave you with a huge loss potential, and I'll show you how that's determined in just a second. So when will you get assigned? There's really two main situations that we have to be aware of where you would get assigned. The first, it can happen at any point before expiration, but it typically only happens during the last few days before expiration. If you go out 20 days, if your option goes in the money, that's not something you have to panic about there, because it's going to be very rare that you would get assigned stock when you start to go out 20, 30, 40 days. It's only going to typically happen with only a few days left to expiration, and if the short option, the option that you've sold, is deep in the money. If it goes barely in the money, you're not going to get assigned stock. Okay, it's typically only when that option is deep in the money. So if you sell an option and the option goes in the money by a few pennies, that's not something you have to take action on right away. Continue to hold position, because in most cases that position will battle back in your favor. That short option will start to come back and go out of the money again. The other situation that you have to be aware of is if it's around a dividend. And specifically, if you're short a call option that's in the money, you have the potential there to be assigned stock because the other person on the other side of the trade would buy the shares of stock to take advantage of the dividend. And I'll talk about that more in just a moment. So what to do if we get assigned? Let's take a look at our TLT example. And for this example, we were actually short the 147, 149 call spread. So that meant I sold the 147 call and I bought the 149 call to make it a risk-defined trade. Now, initially, we collected 66 cents or $66 per spread on the position. That was our max profit potential. Our maximum risk was $134. That's the most I could have lost on the trade. And that number right here, that risk number, is calculated by taking the difference between our strikes, the $2 difference between the 147 and 149 strikes, and we're going to subtract the $66 that we collected to put the position on. This number right here, the 134, that is the most I can lose on the trade, even if I get assigned on the position. Here's how that works. Let's say that 147 short call, it gets assigned. The TLT stock goes above 147. You get assigned stock, that's going to leave you short 100 shares of stock at $147 a share. Now you have two different options to close out of this position. The first is as soon as you notice that you're assigned stock, and you'll notice that because your broker is going to send you an email, they're going to send you a notification telling you, hey, you got assigned, you now have a stock position on. You could just close out of the stock position that very next day and close out of your long option. That would leave you flat the position. That's the first way you can do it. If your long option is also in the money, so in this case, if the stock price is above 149, you can also come in and exercise your long option to close out of the stock position. That would also flatten out your position. Now, you can do that by contacting your broker and letting them know your desire to exercise your long option. The problem with option number 2 here is that option would not be exercised until the end of that trading day. If the stock moves around during that trading day, okay, that could potentially impact your position. So if you want to close it out and get flat the position before the end of that trading day, you can always just close out of your stock position, close out of your long option, and leave you flat the position. That's typically going to be the best way of closing out of the position. Now, let's say that happened. Let's take a look at the P&L scenario here. Because a lot of times people say, wait a second, if I get assigned stock, am I going to have a much larger loss in the position? You won't. Here's how it works. We sold that initial 147 to 149 call spread and collected $66, 66 cents per spread. The stock, let's say we open up, and if I take a look at the Thinkorswim platform, which I'll do in just a second, you'll see that the stock, okay, the price has rallied. And let's say the stock price is up at 154.48. Okay, the 147 call, let's say it does get assigned. Okay, now all of a sudden you've got to deliver the shares of stock at 147, but the actual price of the stock now is 154.48. You're going to be faced with a losing position immediately on the stock side. You're going to be down $7.48 per share. How do I know that? Because the stock price is 154.48. We got assigned on our 147 call, so the difference there is $7.48. Now, if the price of the stock's at 154.48, we do have the option of also exercising our 149 call. By doing that, we would exercise our right to buy 100 shares at 149. That would actually leave us with a profit on that part of the position. It'd leave us with a profit of $5.48 per share. So if you start to add this up here, we collected 66 cents. So we take the $7.48 that we would have lost on that 147 call being exercised. Okay, we got assigned on that part. But then we also exercised our right to buy the 100 shares at 149. That would leave us a profit of $5.48 on that part of the position. And remember, back when we initiated the whole spread, we collected 66 cents. When we add all of that up, the $748 loss, the $548 profit, and the 66 cents that we collected to put the spread on, lo and behold, when you add all those numbers up, it leaves us with $134 as a loss on the position. Okay, what was our max risk initially on the position? It was $134, right? So we always know what the maximum loss is right up front before we ever put the trade on. Okay, so it might take a few times for some of you to review this video, to review the numbers just to fully get a hang of it. But when you start to add it up, we're always going to be in a risk-defined trade. Now, what if we have assignment due to a dividend? Okay, so let's say the stock or the ETF has a dividend. In that case, if that call option that you sold is in the money, there are some traders out there that will want to exercise their right to buy the shares of stock to take advantage of the dividend, right? So when that happens, a lot of times they'll see the notice from their broker saying, hey, there's a dividend upcoming on TLT, for example. You have some assignment risk there. You may want to close out of your position. Here's a little shortcut. Here's a hack that you can use to determine if you have assignment risk or not. Okay, and this slide right here, I can't take credit for this slide. It's a shortcut that I found from another trader, and I always knew about this shortcut. It's worded in a really nice way, so I wanted to include it in here. Highly recommend that if you're newer to this whole idea of assignment risk and dividend risk, print out this slide, take a screenshot, print it out. It's a really nice, handy tool to have initially when you're just getting started with options. So heading into an ex-dividend date, if you are holding a short in-the-money call option, here's a quick hack to determine if it's likely that you're going to be assigned short stock. So what you'll want to do is check out the bid price of the corresponding out-of-the-money put option. So in the case of TLT, if we are short the 147 call, take a look at the bid price of the 147 put. Okay, what you're going to want to do is see if that bid price of the corresponding put is higher than the expected dividend. If it is, you do not have much risk of assignment. How do you know what the dividend is? You can just do a quick Google search. A lot of sites out there that will list what the upcoming dividend will be, or they'll take a look at historical dividends, what they were in the past, and it'll show you, okay, what can you expect on the upcoming dividend? So for TLT, we had a dividend coming up, and so a lot of you got the notice here on Friday. The dividend on TLT is typically 24 to 25 cents. So if we come in and take a look at that corresponding 147 put, if the bid price is higher than 24 to 25 cents, which is the upcoming dividend, you don't have much risk of assignment. And I'll show you that in just a second. If, however, the put premium is lower than the expected dividend, then you're at high risk of being assigned, and you may want to close out of the position and reestablish after the dividend. And I'll show you, we'll go over to Thinkorswim in just a second. I just want to get through these last slides here, and then we'll go over and take a look at Thinkorswim. So if you are assigned stock because of the dividend, there is one additional piece of risk there that you have to be aware of. Because if you are assigned stock, you're also going to be on the hook to pay the dividend. So on top of the loss that we talked about here earlier, you're going to have to pay that dividend. So in the case of a 25-cent dividend, for example, if you got assigned 100 shares of stock, you're going to be on the hook for an additional $25. So it's not a huge risk. It's not going to blow out an account, for example, but it is a risk that's there that you have to be aware of. Okay, so let me go ahead and let's go ahead and bring up Thinkorswim here a second. So I put up the TLT position, the 147, 149 call spread that we had on at the end of last week, and we had it on in the March 20 options. So if we know that we're short the 147 call, and I highlighted it right here. Here's the 147 call on the left. It's highlighted in blue. We're going to go over and take a look at the corresponding 147 put. It's right here. And you can see the bid price of that corresponding put is at 66 cents. Well, if we do a quick Google search, we can see historically the normal dividend on TLT is around 24 to 25 cents. The bid price in this case is actually higher than that dividend, right? It's much higher than that 24 to 25 cent range. As a result, we have a very low risk of getting assigned. It doesn't mean it's zero. Okay, the risk is always there. If somebody did want to exercise their rights, to buy the 100 shares at 147, they could. It's just the risk is very slim. So what do we do with that? How do we apply that? Number one, if you wanted to hold through the dividend, knowing that there's a very low chance of getting assigned, you could do that. Wouldn't have a problem with it. The other option would be to roll the position. What that means is you would close out of the 147, 149 call spread that we're showing here at the bottom. This is our existing position. You can close it out, buy the spread back, just stay flat till after the dividend, or you could sell a new spread and just go out of the money. Okay, make sure that you go out of the money here, go above the current stock price, and sell another call spread that's out of the money. The out of the money options, there's no dividend risk there. It's only an in-the-money call option. If you are short a put spread, for example, you don't have to worry about it there. It's only the short in-the-money calls that you have to be concerned with. And it's not every in-the-money call. Again, the hack here is when you are short an in-the-money call, take a look at the corresponding put. So it's just the other put, the other option there, the 147 put in this case. If the bid price is above the value of the dividend, you don't have to worry about getting assigned. Okay, so the key takeaway in this video, for whatever reason, people get so concerned with the whole thought of getting assigned because in your mind, you imagine, oh my gosh, I can lose more than what's in my account. It's not the case. That's a big reason why we use the vertical spreads. We are able to define our risk up front when we put the position on. Okay, I sleep better at night knowing that. In this market with such crazy movement that we're seeing, I feel better knowing what my maximum loss is up front. So if you do happen to get assigned, don't panic. It's the worst possible thing you can do. There's always a way out. Contact me directly. Contact your broker. Even better to contact your broker directly. Contact their trade desk because they're always going to be able to help you out of the position. And as I showed in that example earlier, we know what our maximum loss is. Even in a worst case scenario where we do get assigned, you can always close out of your position. All right, so if you have any questions on this, if you need more detail, feel free to send me an email, mike@netpicks.com. You can always give me a call directly as well. My direct number is 269-978-0971. We'll continue to talk about this going forward because, I use the example of TLT. This could happen with an individual stock. It could happen with some of the other ETFs. I just use TLT as our example today, but that shortcut, that hack that we talked about is true on any product out there. If it's an individual stock, if it's another ETF, you can use it on any product out there. So, very simple process. Once you go through it a couple times, you'll get more comfortable with it. But again, feel free to reach out with any questions you might have. So I'm going to wrap this video up here. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, everybody. And we'll hit the ground running here next week, hopefully with another active market.